This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours. We're a music podcast that chats to artists, musicians and creatives on their songwriting craft and upcoming projects. I'm your host Simon Fink and welcome to episode 279. Last week we were lucky enough to sit down with Georgia, all the way from the UK, and today she's our guest on the podcast. The songwriter and producer recently released her 3rd studio record, which is entitled Euphoric, and was in Australia last week in support of said record. Now, before you listen to our in-person chat with Georgia, please make sure you subscribe to this podcast on whatever app you find good podcasts on, and ensure you're following us across all of our social media channels. Now, details for all can be found within the show notes of today's episode. Our guest today is Georgia. The UK producer, songwriter and singer began her musical journey as a drummer for artists like K Tempest and then began releasing dance and club music of her own back in 2015. From there, she built up her chops as a go-to songwriter around the UK, and it was her 2nd record, Seeking Thrills, that really resonated with people, which went as far as getting her nominated for a Mercury Prize. It also found Georgia working with a number of her heroes. Now, whether that was collaborating with acts like Mura Masa or Gorillaz, songwriting with Years and Years and Shania Twain, or touring with artists like the Flaming Lips. Having previously recorded her first 2 records in her bedroom back in the UK, Georgia thought that it was time to try something new for her 3rd record and ended up over in Los Angeles recording the record with Rostam, who some of you might know from his work with Haim or Rae Jepsen. He was previously a member of Vampire Weekend, and we've previously had him on this podcast as well. The results of those sessions proved to be very fruitful, and last month we were gifted with Euphoric, the 3rd studio record from Georgia. While in Australia last week, we were lucky enough to fly over and chat with Georgia about everything Euphoric. We discussed the songwriting approach that she took with Rostam and the immediate success of those sessions. We talk about her experiences as a songwriter and in particular what it is like to work with one Miss Shania Twain. And we also chat about her thoughts on Australia and whether we can expect to see her back for a tour soon. Euphoric is out now, and we've left links in the show notes where you can buy or stream the record. We also want to say a massive thank you to Lucy from Domino Recordings for her help with today's episode. Here is our conversation with Georgia. It's euphoric. It's euphoric when you're standing next to me. It's euphoric whenever you're next. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Georgia. Hello.
Hi, hello.
How are you going?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Happy to be here in a kind of sunny Melbourne.
Which is a weird sentence to say, it is.
I know. It's kind of blue skies, although it does look like it's about to cloud over.
It does a little bit, but you are here in Australia. We're here sitting in the offices of Domino here in Australia, so thank you very much for your time today.
No, amazing. It's, I'm very happy to be part of your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind. We were talking just a second ago about how you are here, but it's a little bit of a whirlwind trip that you're kind of in and out within a week. How I think even when I was obviously doing all my prep for today and kind of wanting to see what's been going on with yourself for the last number of months, I think you were doing like a record store tour even last week in a different country. So how are you feeling? How are you keeping up?
Well, it's that sort of the couple of weeks into the release of the record. So you do these in-stores, and it's just a chance to get kind of up close and personal with the fans, and like I sign stuff and, give them hugs, and, it's just a really nice, intimate way of connecting. And it's been really interesting going to the different countries and doing it. And it's been really fun, and I'm just so thankful to be here in Australia. It feels like, it feels a bit crazy. It's crazy how it suddenly all becomes very real, that music can connect in different areas of the world, and you're sort of like, wow, this is kind of nuts in a way.
Do you find the fans different at each kind of different country in terms of the in-store appearances?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I haven't done that many here. I can only really speak of like in Europe or the UK, and it does differ in different places. Like there's a place in the UK called Nottingham, and there's a Rough Trade, which is a big record shop in the UK, and I did that in-store in Nottingham, and I was expecting kind of muso men to turn up, because I just thought that's the type of thing, and it was literally 13-year-old girls, and I was just like, wow, this is bizarre. They just come back, finished school, and then headed to the record shop. So that was really cool.
That's
so
awesome.
it does. I don't know. You can't really predict it, I don't think.
Which is fair enough. With this new record, we are talking about your brand new record, which is out now. It's the album is called Euphoric. The single is called It's Euphoric, just for clarification. But it is a brilliant album. So firstly, congratulations on this record. It's I have been listening to it. Your management very kindly sent it through before it was released, so thank you for that. But I don't know how to place this record in terms of, I feel like it's a dance record, but it's not a club record. It's like an outside club record, if you will. There's a lot of organic kind of sounds, but still remaining within a dance music realm. Firstly, how are you feeling now that the record's out, now that you've been able to kind of share these songs with everyone?
Well, I think, first of all, I think you're right. You can't really place this record. It's... when I say we, me and Rostam, when we were kind of creating this record, we did want the energy of a dance record. We wanted the energy of a Discovery by Daft Punk, or that sort of thing. But then we wanted the sound textures of outdoors, so nature, so not in the club necessarily. And I do think there's a difference really when you make club dance music to kind of maybe thinking about dance music in a bit more of a, we call it back home, Balearic vibe. So in Ibiza, there was a form of dance that came around called the Balearic dance, and it was very much influenced by the island and partying outside and stuff like that. So, that's what we kind of set out really to achieve. I think it's just amazing to see it come out and now kind of go into the ether of the music world and see if it connects, or it's just so hard releasing music these days. It's just so much music, so I'm just happy that it's being well received, and
100%. I think from an outsider's perspective, it seems like it is being well received. It seems like it's getting great reviews. You already played an in-store in Sydney, which I saw had quite a few people attending. I think a friend of the podcast and someone who might have interviewed you before, David James Young. Yes. So shout out to David.
Shout out to Dave,
it looks as though people are really connecting with this album, which I kind of love. It is a brilliant record. As you mentioned, you worked with Rostam on the record, who is known for his work in Vampire Weekend, but also with artists like Haim and I think Rae Jepsen as well, which is a bit more, I want to say, pop focused than maybe some of your previous collaborators. Was that intentional? I think there was a DM somewhere between a Mura Masa demo, but yeah, was that, I guess, a discussed thing, or was it just like organic with how you guys came to the sound?
Well, the initial kind of contact was very much like he got in contact with me because he heard the Mura Masa demo, Live Like We're Dancing, and loved it, and sort of wanted to reach out to say, you know, if I was ever in LA, come over to the studio and stuff like that. And I was, you know, very excited and very overwhelmed by that message, you know. So I'm such a huge fan of his. And then, you know, I fast forward sort of like months. I was in LA, and and I got a couple of days free, and I messaged him, and so he said, sure, come over. And we hadn't really just talked or discussed about what we were going to do if we got in the studio together. There was just me kind of being enthusiastic. And within the first hour of that meeting, we wrote It's Euphoric. So everything you hear on that single is actually everything we laid down that day. Crazy. So it just happened really, like, musically it happened completely organically, and that's why I think for me it was so special, and it was a definitive moment in my decision really of how to approach the next record. And that was even before Seeking Thrills came out, so it was very organic between us, and you know, it doesn't always work out like that really.
Well, 100%. I was going to ask, and I'm going to come back around to the album, but I was going to ask about collaboration, because I feel like you've kind of had these experiences with very different artists, but all like incredible songwriters. I think you've, as I mentioned, Rostam. We had the lovely Wayne Coyne on the pod earlier in the year, which is which is cool. Yeah. And so I know you've collaborated with him and the Flaming Lips, and I think. Please correct me if this one's wrong. Did you write with Shania Twain? Yeah. That, firstly, that's wild. Yeah. Okay, awesome. But
this season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
Discover Hydro, the best kept secret in fitness. Hydro is the state-of-the-art at-home rower that engages 86% of your muscles, delivering the ultimate full-body workout in just 20 minutes. From advanced to beginner, Hydro has over 500 classes, shot worldwide and taught by Olympians and world-class athletes. For a 30-day risk-free trial, go to hydro.com and use code ROW450 to save $450 on a Hydro Pro rower. That's HYDROW.com, code ROW450.
I guess, how do you find collaboration, or how do you work as a collaborator when it comes to all these different artists and the kind of songs that they make?
I've been very lucky, really. Over the years, it's just all happened very organically. It hasn't really come through my record label or publishers, or like there's not a person behind there going, I'm going to set Georgia up with so-and-so. It's just kind of happened through either festivals, playing festivals where, so with Wayne, we were playing a festival in the UK called Wilderness, and the Flaming Lips were headlining, and I was on the main stage sort of early on, and I was playing and then looked side of stage, and Wayne was just like totally moshing out, and I was like, what? This is nuts. That's Wayne Coyne. And then that kind of started our friendship, and so that happened like that, and all the rest of them have kind of happened in a similar way, really. But someone like Shania, that came through. I do quite a lot of work with Mark Ralph, who's a producer and writer and mixer from the UK, and he helped me do Seeking Thrills, and so we've become quite a sort of duo. Like, record labels will actually ask for me and Mark with certain various artists, and so Mark kind of put my name forward for Shania sessions, so that's how that sort of happened. But again, it's quite organic. It wasn't like, you know, and what kind of really I guess drew me to working with Shania was that she wanted to work from scratch. So she wanted to have these writing sessions where it was just like, let's get in the studio and write a song. So it wasn't like working on stuff that she was, you know, she had done. So that for me felt like a real opportunity. So that was brilliant. I mean, you know, it's very hard. It happens, I think. They say, don't they, the best sort of collaborations happen organically. You know, it's always happened through the music or just through the music, I think. Yeah.
I feel like with artists, I don't know about you, in terms of going in and songwriting with other artists who obviously have very well-known back catalogues, I think my problem would be going in and being, I'm writing with Shania Twain and not being able to get like, or like, do you know what I mean? Like the preconceived sound or notion that you have of those artists.
Yeah.
When you go in, is it just like a thing of that you kind of, you yourself have to kind of scrap almost everything you know about them to?
No, I don't think so. I think I mean, you're very much aware with someone like Shania, the total success that she had with that record in the 90s. It was, you know, still like one of the highest. I think she is the highest selling female artist of all time still. Yeah. So, you know, there's no way you can go into the session and think, I can't like not think about that. And but I actually thought, well, this is, if you think about it as an opportunity and see the history of the artist as something that perhaps you can play on, you know, like definitely I thought, you know, I could write another sort of country dance song for her, you know. So I did. You do go in having done some research and list, like, you know, that's just kind of a good way of like turning the opportunity into something, of course, fruitful.
Do you remember your own first introduction to songwriting, and I guess what got you into the art of lyric writing and songwriting? Yeah,
gosh. I was very much into like learning songs from a very early age. So it's like, I remember my mum and dad buying me like a beginner's guide to songs on guitar. Now I was probably about 11 or 12, and it was when I could, you know, I was starting to really sort of find my way on the guitar and learn bar chords and different progressions and stuff. So I could read chords, I could read the music. And I guess I started flicking through the songbook and, you know, learning the kind of classics from Bob Dylan to, you know, Joni Mitchell to, you know, I remember learning a lot of T-Rex songs and Beatles, Beach Boys, you know, and then soul, Motown. So I sort of, and then I think it must have just gone from learning that to then trying to write my own sort of dabble in it.
I can do this.
Yeah, it's just like, well, maybe if I sung this melody over this chord that's a bit like Fleetwood Mac, then it would be my own, you know. So I started to just explore, really. And the exploration turned into something more. And I, you know, suddenly got my hands on a 4-track tape recorder and started to record various instruments onto the tape and then record my vocals and then kind of mess with it, add effects. And so it all started to kind of go a bit deeper. And then I started to learn about artists like Prince, or, you know, kind of did it all themselves, and I was a bit like, oh, well, maybe I don't need a band, like maybe I can just do each element myself, because I'm not a very, probably as you can hear on this podcast, I'm not a very articulate person. So
I don't think that, but
I'm not really that great. I've never been good in band situations because I've never been able to really communicate the idea, which is probably a great thing that I'm not in a band, because people would probably find me really frustrating. So I could just kind of did it all the time. I was lucky enough to have really supportive parents, and they let me kind of stay up till midnight practicing guitar and, you know, and making weird noises out of my bedroom. It really was just like that, really. Are
they musically inclined in any way?
Yeah, my dad is in music. Mm-hmm. My dad is in quite a successful dance band called Left Field. Oh, yeah. From the 90s. And so there was lots of musical equipment around the house from quite an early age. So it was like, you know, I was in our flat, you know, there'd be like drum machines on the floor, and I'd pick that up. Dad, can I borrow this? He'd be like, yeah, just don't break it, you know. So I was lucky enough to dip into all of the kind of electronic things from quite an early age as well, and see the kind of capabilities of the electronic world.
That's cool.
Yeah. So no, they had a big part to play in it. Yeah, they were very encouraging. They weren't like, we don't want you to do this, Georgia. I mean, when it came to the kind of, I want to find a record label and try and do this, they were a little bit cautious, just because they knew what a tough industry it is. But they were always very supportive. Yeah,
that's cool. That's lovely to hear. With Euphoric, I know it's such an unfair kind of question to ask any artist, because it's like picking a favourite child or something like that. So I'm not going to say what's the favourite song. In terms of this collection of songs, is there one that you're the most proudest of, or like one that you hope kind of resonates with people?
Yeah, there's a song called So What, and it's the end track, and I wrote that song with Justin Parker, who's a songwriter who wrote Video Games with Lana Del Rey and Stay for Rihanna. So he's real serious like songwriter, and it was the first time going in with anybody of that caliber personally, and kind of, you know, going, let's write a song. And you're like, this guy wrote Video Games, you know. But it just worked, and me and Justin spent about 3 days in the studio, and it was around the time of the coming out of the lockdown, so everyone was kind of in quite a weird state, really. It was a bit like, what's just happened, trying to digest the world, everything. You know, the kind of idea of like society functioning normally again. And we sort of threw all that kind of emotions and those kind of feelings in that song, So What. And I just came out of those 3 days feeling like a songwriter for the first time. It was a really enjoyable experience, and I think Justin I learned a lot of like how pop writing is done, and I really love that song. It's an optimistic ballad, and I always end my records with a ballad. It's kind of a sort of feature now, I think. But this one, even though the message is like, you know, so what, whatever, we all make mistakes, blah blah blah. It's kind of flipped in a very positive context, and I think it's quite clever. I really do love that song.
Oh, I love to hear that. It's I always find it very interesting. I know you just said like you felt like a real songwriter coming out of that. for someone who's worked with, as we said, like all these other artists,
Yeah.
I always find it so interesting when I feel like there's not the goalposts move, but like that songwriters are continually, what's the word? I don't even know I don't think it's like humble. It's a thing of that, like, that you're still in, what is the word? Still impressing yourself. Still like kind of like
learning.
Still learning. It's an ever evolving thing. But
Absolutely.
it is a thing of like I find that incredible that you say I felt like a real songwriter. It's like, look at all this other stuff you've done. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean, actually. But I think part of this, why I love being in this kind of artistic world, is that you are constantly learning. I don't go into any situation with a sort of complacency and a sort of feeling like I've conquered it. I know the formula. You know, I really don't. And because every situation that I find myself in is
vastly different.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can kind of, I love the idea of this being a longevity career, you know, and I love the idea of like growing as a musician or as a songwriter or as a singer, and the different kind of phases that you enter. I've still got so much to learn, you know, and I think that's the excitement. That's what keeps me going, really. That's what keeps me wanting to
create and do all that stuff. Yeah. That's awesome. As we've mentioned, you are here playing, you've played Sydney already, and you're, I believe, playing the Interdoor in Melbourne this evening.
Yeah.
Seems like a silly question to ask, but it's an obvious one that we have to ask. Can we expect to see you back in Australia at some point in support of the record?
Of course, yeah. I mean, we're working on it. I'm hoping that a couple of festivals next year, and I would love to play as much as possible here. I love it here, and I'm such a fan of all the music that comes from Australia, and also just the way you guys like embrace like different sounding music. I think it's just so cool that, you know, you can be a bit weird and indefinable here, and that's kind of the mainstream. I like it. It's
funny, but that is you've hit the nail on the head, because I think we do have like some mainstream pop artists, and they're fantastic in their own right, so no discrediting them, but it does seem like our most popular acts are slightly left of centre, a little bit odd, but apparently we love the oddball, so
I love that.
Cool.
I'm all for that, because I'm a total oddball, you know.
I know before we recorded you said looking at proper you'd fit right in here in Australia if that's the case. So.
Exactly. I mean, you know, I've sort of fallen in love with this country, I think, in this past week, like just being in Sydney and fully appreciating. I mean, I know obviously it's like there's a lot of politics going on at the moment, and it's the same in the UK. But I did have a moment, I just stood there by the harbour, by the Sydney Opera, and I was just like, God, this really is kind of incredible.
Yeah, especially if you're by the harbour.
I took a moment of like, wow, and then I walked behind the harbour bridge, and I found this like little area of kind of houses that were all from like the 19th century, and it was like, I don't know, just suddenly I was like, wow, this city's like, you discover something new about it. And then being here in Melbourne, it's like totally different. But it's got its own cool thing going on, like ultra cool vibes I'm getting from Melbourne. It just seems you guys are really, at the moment, like art seems to be a real thriving thing here.
We do love our art here. So look, again, whenever you decide to come join us in a touring capacity or whatever kind of capacity, we look forward to it. Georgia, we usually ask our guests what they're currently listening to. Is there anything at the moment that you've got on high rotation?
Well, yeah, it's an album that I just always have on rotation, and it's Haim, the Women in Music Part 2. I found myself listening to that record all the time. Like since it came out, I listened to it like literally once a week. So I literally flew tear listening to it. So yeah, Haim, it's the girls.
It is a fantastic album. I know that we also did have the lovely Rostam on the podcast a while ago.
Wow.
And we spoke about his involvement with that record because it is an incredible record. Just the instrumentation and the sonics
I love it. I went on tour with them, actually.
Did you?
I opened up for them in the UK last year, and it was just so incredible to see them play every day, and like we've become really good friends. And
love that.
Yeah, it felt like a real family, being part of a family because of Rostam, and
of course.
Yeah, I find them so inspirational.
Oh, look, I absolutely love that recommendation. Thank you so much for your time today, Georgia. I do appreciate it. And congrats on Euphoric, which is the brand new record, which is out now.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you? If people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else. Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.